I'm hoping this is working. I am doing a live stream this morning, and it's weird because I've done a couple at this point, and now for some reason today, Facebook is telling me that my version of Chrome is out of date and that I need to get the latest version. It's very strange. Anyway, I am really excited to be doing this Ask Me Anything live stream. I've already had some people submit some questions in the comments on the kind of like the post about this video. So I'm going to answer those. If you have questions and you want to drop them in the comments, I'll be happy to answer that. And if you miss this, it's not a big deal because I'm going to end up uploading this to my YouTube channel. So you could always catch the recap there. All right. So the first question that was submitted to me was basically about like my journey with Reiki, how I got started, what made me feel like I wanted to do this, my calling, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to jump right in. For those of you who I'm not familiar with, my name is Jessica Sharp. I've been a Reiki practitioner for 7 years. The first few years I was part-time, and then the last 4 years I've been full-time. So my personal journey to becoming a Reiki practitioner was beautiful and organic, and basically started because I'd known about Reiki when I was in high school. I had a friend whose mom was trained, so like I heard people talking about it. I knew that it was something where your hands got warm and you put your hands on people and they felt better. That was all I knew. But it was on my radar from about the late 90s on. Then, before I had kids, I didn't really have a career. I worked in food service, did odd jobs, but nothing that was like really a calling. And I knew that when my kids were older, I wanted some kind of vocation. But I didn't know what that was. All I knew was that I wanted it to be in a helping profession, but there were some roadblocks to doing that. So I'm really squeamish about blood. So that ruled out nursing and vet tech. I am terrible at asking for money. So that ruled out sales and nonprofit. So I was just kind of like wandering around, like, what am I gonna do, But when my son was born, this was December of 2011, when he was about 2 weeks old, I developed a raging case of mastitis, and I was in bed with a really high fever. I could barely move, and he was in the other room crying. He was only 2 weeks old, and my husband was with him trying to calm him down, and nothing was working. And I was laying in bed, sick as a dog, and just like desperate at that moment. So I was like, I'm just gonna lay here and I'm gonna see if I can like telepathically send him some good mom energy. And like, he stopped crying. And I was like, okay, whatever. That was a lucky fluke. So I stopped. I pulled back. And he started crying again. And I was like, okay, let me try again. And he stopped crying. And we went back and forth like this for like 5 minutes. So basically I was torturing my 2-week-old infant for 5 minutes. But I started to think, well, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there is something. Because even as a kid, I had been very aware of energy. Like I could sense people's energetic signature. When they were upset, it wasn't just like I could see it on their face. Like I could sense almost like electricity in the air coming at me. If somebody touched something and then walked away, I could sense their energy on that object. And when I tried to talk about that to people, they laughed at me. So I buried it, I ignored it for decades, but it was always still there. It doesn't mean it stopped completely. It's just that I wasn't giving attention to it on a day-to-day basis or a moment-to-moment basis. But I knew that that was a possibility for me. So I started to think, well, maybe there's something to this Reiki. Maybe I could be a good Reiki practitioner. And I'm a library kid, so I went to the library and checked out books about Reiki. I think the first one was Reiki, A Comprehensive Guide by Pamela Miles. So I just started to learn about it from books. And in doing so, I was also looking on Google for like classes and stuff, but I knew I knew myself, and like I was the kind of person that would like jump from thing to thing to thing and be like, this is the thing that's gonna change my life. And then in 4 days, I would lose interest in it. And I really didn't want to do that. And I thought that if I took a basic Reiki class, like a weekend, because Reiki classes are usually taught in like a weekend workshop. So it'll be like a 6 hour workshop that you do, or maybe it's 6 hours Saturday and Sunday. And I knew myself well enough at that point, thank God, to know that if I did that, I'd be like, this is the thing. But then on Monday, I would go back to changing diapers and scheduling play dates, and I would forget what I learned probably. And I wouldn't feel confident enough to actually create a business or offer it to any person as a career. So I knew that if I was going to do this as a job, I was going to need more than just a week, and I wanted to do an apprenticeship. Now they are very hard to find, let me tell you. And the only one I could find at the time was in New York City. It was going to be $10,000. I was going to have to travel. I mean, it was over a year, but it just wasn't sustainable. There was no way. There was absolutely no way I was going to make it work. And the universe works in very mysterious ways, because they say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and that is literally what happened. I was at the Main Street Festival in 2012, and I have a friend who owns an acupuncture studio on Main Street called Neighborhood Acupuncture. Look it up; it's amazing. And I said to him, like, hey, he had a booth, and I was at the booth, and I was like, do you know anybody who does Reiki? And he's like, yeah, here's this guy, here's Greg. He's our Reiki practitioner, and he's about to start teaching a class that's a year-long apprenticeship, 5 minutes from my house. And I was just blown. And that was it. That was when I knew. It was like the universe was like, ah! So that was the moment for me. And I took that class, did the apprenticeship, and it was exactly what I needed, because it was sustained practice. It was sustained learning. It wasn't like a file dump on somebody's head for a weekend and then bye. When not only did we learn about like how to actually treat people and how to sense energy, but we learned how to ethically do so, because there's so many ways that people just decide that they're within their rights to start messing with people's energy systems, and it's really, really inappropriate. So like, it was wonderful to get that ethics training. It was wonderful to get all of the deep richness that can come from like what we call a traditional Japanese style of Reiki. There's if somebody has questions about that, I can get into that later. That's kind of like, there's 2 different tracks of Reiki. There's 2 different styles. And if you want to know more about that, drop it in the comments. I'd be happy to talk about that if you're interested. So that's my story and how I got started with Reiki. Greg Lemich, he's now a doctor. He's now a psychologist. He moved away from Maryland in 2016 to go to UVA to get his doctorate. And he basically gave me his caseload when he left. I took over the space, and he told me when he left, he was like, and you're gonna also take over teaching. And I was like, ha ha. I didn't feel ready, did not feel ready at all. So I waited 2 years, and then I finally felt ready. And, having kind of gotten my sea legs as a full-time practitioner and felt settled in my practice and my skills. I mean, really it's a skill thing, and it's also being able to talk about it. So like, doing it's one thing, and then being able to like consciously explain what I'm doing to somebody else, like a little bit more tricky. So it took me 2 years, finally got comfortable with that. And then I started teaching in 2018, the same apprenticeship program. Thanks COVID, because now I had to cancel it for this upcoming year, and I'm really pissed. There probably would have been ways I could have continued to teach online, at least for people who are just new to Reiki. Like, the apprenticeship program is really for people who are starting from zero, and I don't feel comfortable starting from zero with people online. I think that they need to have the table work practice. They need to have the one-on-one in the room, feeling energy on other people, and me there to validate it. And I can't do that. I just can't do that online. So this coming year, Not going to be teaching it. It was just super bummer, but I will be teaching it hopefully in the years to follow. So that's my story with how I came to Reiki. So I hope that answers the first question. The second question that I got was, how does remote Reiki work? How does distance healing work? And this is such an important question, such a great question, given that we are in the times we're in, and a virtual model of healthcare is really kind of on the upswing. So, the way, and I'm going to try to explain this articulately without getting too much in the weeds about anything. My basic elevator speech about distance Reiki and how it works and why it works is this: energy doesn't need to follow the same rules and parameters that physical matter does because it is intangible. This phone is a tangible object, but energy is an intangible object. Therefore, it doesn't need to follow those same rules and parameters of occupying the same space at the same time. Newtonian physics teaches us that two objects can't be in the same space at the same time, right? Well, along comes quantum physics to throw that out the window, because in the quantum realm, when we get down to the super, super tiny and more of the energetic realm, two objects can inhabit the same space, and they can be a particle or a wave, and it's a lot more fluid. So that's the realm I'm working in when I'm connecting with someone's energy remotely. And the way it works is that I am able to put myself into a meditative state and connect with their energy anywhere in the world. When I first started doing distance healing, all of my clients were deployed military. So they were in Japan or Korea or Germany. And I was so grateful to have those referrals, right? Because otherwise I never would have met these people. But I was working on them while they were asleep because they're in a completely different time zone. I was working on them while they were asleep, and I would record what I was doing and send it to them later, and it just worked. It worked. It's distance healing is what we consider in Reiki training a level 2 skill. So it's not something that you're going to learn right away. It takes some time to be able to trust what you're feeling. And there's a symbol. It's called the distance symbol. And we use that symbol to kind of just put ourselves into that meditative state. We meditate on that symbol. And what the symbol does, and I hope I'm not giving away too many trade secrets here by saying this, but like basically what I teach my students and the way I was taught is that when we're healing distantly, it's basically just like opening a door. And then the person's energy is on the other side of that door, and time and space don't matter. So that's how I'm able to connect with someone's energy. If I've got any of my distance clients on this right now, you want to drop a comment in the comment box about your experience, please feel free. I'll read it. People can see it. But because of coronavirus, at this point, I'm only working distantly, and I'm still able to have these really beautiful interactions with clients, and it's wonderful. It's lovely. And with that, I guess I should segue right in to the third question that I received, which was, what do you mean when you talk about, and I'm paraphrasing because it was in a comment on a different platform, but it was like, what do you see when you're doing Reiki? Oh my God. Okay, so I'm going to try, again, I will try to explain this very articulately. There's two different kind of ways that I pick up information from people's energy bodies. One is seeing, and then the other is what I'll call hearing / knowing. And if you've ever heard of like the clairs, so there's like clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, clair something else, I can't remember. The clairs, we call them clairs. I sometimes will see things, but I'm not so much seeing them with my eyes open. Some people are some people just have that skill. They have that gift where they will see an animal or they'll see a person or something, and it's like, I guess it borders a little bit on mediumship, but they're seeing energy forms and energy bodies or essences that aren't necessarily visible in the 3D realm. Um, but I don't have that. That's not something I can do. One time, it was very interesting. It was about a couple months ago, actually. I was teaching my apprenticeship students before we had to transition to virtual. Um, about the third eye chakra and the ability to sense energy is really being open to messages from spirit, being open to other energy forms, and having that gift is really a third chakra gift, or skill, really. I don't want to say gift in that it's like only special people can do this. Literally anybody can do this. It's just a matter of how open you're willing to be and how much kind of like surrender you're willing to introduce to yourself. Um, so we were doing that, and I saw out of the corner of my eye a black cat. And when you see something out of the corner of your eye and then you turn to look at it more clearly, once I turned my head to look at it more clearly, it was gone. And I was like, oh my God, what? It was like, it was definitely a cat. Like I could see it weaving through one of my students' legs. And I was like, I kind of freaked out. I mean, I have not been doing this for 7 years, and I was still like, what? Who has a cat? What's got a cat? Who had a cat? Because I was like, is it a ghost of a cat? And sure enough, it was. It was the cat of the student whose legs it was in. It was the spirit of the cat that had passed on. So that was crazy. It was really cool. But otherwise, that doesn't happen to me. And it's so funny because like over these years that I've been doing it, I've prayed, I used to think that if I didn't see things the way that other people did, then I wasn't a good healer, or I wasn't really a healer. I wasn't, I think sometimes in our culture, especially with like this kind of like, the new age spiritual kind of obsessions that are coming into the fore now with the internet, is that we confuse spiritual gifts with being somehow anointed by God. And that's really not true at all. I mean, I have met people who have the ability to see spiritual forms or angels or whatever, and they're not nice people. Like, they're kind of terrible people. Like, they're racist and mean and just ugh. And then I've met people who are some of the most gifted healers that I've ever met, and they don't see spirits, they don't see angels or colors or auras or anything like that. So it really has nothing to do with like how good of a person you are or how real of a healer you are. And it's funny because for years I was like, dear universe, please let me see auras. Please let me see energy forms with my eyes open. And okay, and this is what she said. And when I say she, I use female pronouns to talk about the universe, even though I know it's genderless. It just feels a little bit more resonant and comfortable with me. She said to me, she's like, first of all, you see fine with your eyes closed. So I don't know why you're so obsessed all of a sudden with seeing with your eyes open too. Second, you've watched enough horror movies in your life, and you spent the first like 30 years of your life praying to God that you'd never see a ghost. So I don't know why you're trying to come, all of a sudden doing that around. She's like, I know you and you know that you would pee your pants if you saw something that wasn't an actual object in 3D time space. Like, you know yourself. And I was like, yeah, I do. So I'm very comfortable seeing imagery, things like that with my eyes closed. She protects me in that way from freaking out and being scared. So that's the seeing. That's kind of like what's going on with seeing. Now, what am I seeing? What specifically am I seeing? Well, sometimes it'll be kind of like a freeze frame. Like if you've ever daydreamed, right? And in your mind, you're seeing things happening, but it's not happening actually in front of your eyes, right? So it's kind of like, it's like a daydream, except that the daydream isn't something I'm creating. It just kind of appears there. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, and it usually it's a freeze frame. It's like a still photo of, for instance, like my client standing at the one end of a long hallway with a lot of doors. Or it'll be um, a cave, like an inside of a cave with like lots of like gems all over the ceiling and walls. And I'll just kind of see that and be like, okay. And then what I'm guided to do from there is to piece together what that means for the client. And I think that's one of the things that's like such a valuable skill for healers. Um, and that's really what I try to help my students with the most. And that's why my classes are so long. That's why I want to be with them in person, is because not only are we sensing energy, but we're also picking up a lot of information, and we're channeling wisdom and intuitive guidance from the energy of the universe for that person, and then helping them to put those puzzle pieces together, because it might not make sense, or it might not be relevant to them until we're sort of like, well, okay, you've had a very disconnect, for instance, right? So like I have a client who had cancer, and the cancer really made this person feel very like, just they didn't want to deal with their body. My body sucks. My body's trash. It's holding me back from all the things I want to do in my life, you know, and this person just kind of put all of their focus and all of their energy into mental pursuits, spiritual pursuits, but like I always was like, God, yeah, my body's holding me back. My body would, my life would be so much better if I wasn't in this body. And that disconnect, right, was actually harming this person. It was making their symptoms worse. It was making their energy level worse. It was making the other side effects worse. So when I was working on this person, I was seeing like two people, and they were like back to back, and they were like, and being able to kind of put that together and be like, maybe if I think this represents like your physical energy and your mental energy, and can we bring those two together, and maybe like in some negotiations or friendship or something like that. It's like I'm getting these pictures that are telling me like, okay, here's what's really going on. And so that's, sometimes it's like a freeze frame. Sometimes it's more of a like watching a movie. So it's like a daydream. Again, it's like a daydream, but it's not something that I'm coming up with like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if this? Now that is actually something that, just to go on a tangent for a moment, I have to be careful with, because as practitioners, we want to make sure that we're not projecting our own ego or our own biases or thoughts about a person's situation onto that person. So like if I'm getting these daydream pictures, or even if it's like words or thoughts, which I'll get to in a second, I need to do a lot of making sure and asking, and just some self check-ins is what I call it. Check in with yourself, to make sure that it's not something that I'm just projecting basically onto the client. So that's the seeing, and now I want to get to the hearing and slash thoughts. And I say hearing slash thoughts because it's like I'm not hearing voices. It's not an auditory thing. It's not that I'm hearing something in my head. But sometimes, just like the daydream pictures, a thought will come into my head, and it's in words. It's like somebody's talking and they're saying a sentence, and it's coming up like a thought, but it's not my thought. And those are really cool. And I was actually doing a series of videos last year called The Spirit Whispers, where I kind of broke down some of these different things. And the reason I know that it's not from my own thought patterns or my own thoughts is that Usually it's surprising to me. Like I'll be like, "Whoa!" Like that thought just came in, and like it's like shocking. And the second reason I'm able to know that it's not from me, it's definitely from um, the person's higher self or the divine or the universe, something like that, is that it's structured in a way with wording that I wouldn't structure my sentences. Like it's usually sort of like an old English style thing. So, for instance, I was working on a woman a few months ago who had been toxic positivity, right? It's such a problem in our culture. And unfortunately, what happens when we're like, when we don't acknowledge and honor all of our feelings, and if we have feelings that are like what I'll call negative, even though I don't like to assign value judgments to them, if we have like anger or frustration or guilt or shame, and we're like, nope, everything's good, I'm good, good vibes only, good vibes only, like it's so toxic. um, and she was, having this kind of thing, and was also very, very religious, very spiritual, and I was working on her, and as I am sensing her energy and sending Reiki energy to her body, I hear, "Is the shadow not sacred?" And I was like, "What?" And it came through as like a yell. Like it was like someone was in my head, like I'm hearing it in my head, not in my ears, but in my head, yelling, like, "Is the shadow not sacred? Is your anger not also my creation? If you truly are a spiritual, like you are religious and you're spiritual and you're connected to all of these things, then isn't that also my creation? And isn't, and just it was coming through as like using I pronouns and me pronouns. So, and that's not the way that I would think about my client. So that's one clue that it was coming from the divine. The other was the sentence structure. "Is not the shadow sacred?" And I was like, that sounds like not the way I talk. So that was really cool. And then the third, to get back to kind of like the first, the second, and then the third way that these messages come through, and I know that they're not mine, is that sometimes they're in other languages and I don't know what they are. Like I've had Latin come through, and then I have to grab like my iPad or something and like Google Translate. And there was one time I was working on a person who had had a tricky relationship with his father. And I was working on his body, and I heard gaudite, gaudite, gaudite. And I was like, and I could see it. I could see it in my mind's eye. I could see it written Gaudite with a little thing. And I was like, I think that's Latin. So I looked it up, Google Translate, and it meant "your father's joy." And I was like, oh my God. Like, I don't know why it was coming through in Latin, but it was. Another example of that is like one time I was working on with a person, and this was actually during a distance session, and I was connected with this person's energy, and I kept hearing "you moja, you moja," and I was like, I don't know what that is. It sounds like, maybe like African language or something, and I was thinking it was like yemoja, and I was differentiating as I was going. So it was like I was asking as I'm hearing this thought come into my head. I'm hearing it like you'd hear a song in your head. You're not actually hearing it, but it's in your head. And it was Umoja, and I was like, Yemoja, and it was like, no, it's Umoja, and I was like, okay. So I looked that up, and it's Swahili for unity, and I was like, oh my God, it's so cool! It's so cool. So those are the spiritual gifts that I have, and everyone's are different, right? But like those are the gifts that I bring to the work that I do. And again, not seeing with my eyes open, because the divine is like, you would freak out and that would be bad. So so seeing with eyes closed and hearing these beautiful messages coming through from the universe, that's kind of like my wheelhouse. Um, Yeah. So those are the questions that were pre-submitted. Does anyone else have another question that you want to drop in the comment box? And I'll wait for 1 second if you type it up. All right. So if there's not, if there's not a question, I guess I will wrap this up. And thank you guys so much. I'm really excited. Like we got to have this time this morning to check in, and I got to actually like come out of the broom closet a little bit on some of the stuff that I don't really have an outlet to talk about. Usually, there's you know, you don't want to just like bust into somebody's conversation and be like, I can hear things in other languages. That's not fun. So thank you guys. I really appreciate your time this morning. And again, this is going to be on YouTube. If you missed the first part, not a big deal. I'm probably also going to upload it to Facebook. So you'll be able to catch the recap. And I hope you guys have an awesome, awesome day. Thanks so much.